Hey man, may sound cliche, but does a cheetah stretch before it hunts? I don't think so. That's right, brother, talking about static stretching. Okay, static stretches are those at which you stand, sit or lie, and hold in a single position for a period of time. Okay, I would say about 90% of college baseball guys and college baseball teams static stretch as a team before practice. You know, when you circle up, throw your arm over your head, grab your quad, hold it, touch your toes. And I'll be honest with you, not only is this pretty much a complete waste of time, but static stretching could also be detrimental to your performance. You know, the golden question, the very first question we all need to ask ourselves is, what are you getting out of static stretching? Why do you static stretch? A lot of people aren't even going to be able to answer this simple question. However, the people that do answer are probably going to say something like, hey, it reduces my chance of getting an injury. Okay, and then if you ask them, why do you think that it reduces your chance of getting injury? A lot of people aren't going to be able to answer that, but the ones that do answer that question may say something like, oh, because it lengthens the muscle fiber, allowing me to have more range of motion. Okay, so number one, people don't understand the mechanism. You are not, I repeat, you are not lengthening the muscle fibers by doing this, by stretching like this. You know, there is some research out there that shows in order to increase the muscle fiber length through a static stretch, you have to hold that static stretch for 30 minutes or longer. You know, so if we did that, practice would simply be over by the time we started touching our toes. And there's the complete other side that people don't think about. Why on earth would you want to lengthen your muscle fibers? Okay, we don't want to lengthen them. We want to keep them short. We want to keep them stiff, and we want to keep them explosive. You know, think about how hard we train in the weight room. We train so hard to build that stiffness and to build those short, powerful muscle spindles. Why on earth would you want to be counterproductive and start lengthening them? You know, think about the classic rubber band theory, man. It definitely applies here. Okay, so you get a brand new rubber band. Think about how often or how long you hold static stretches, you know? So maybe you'll hold your arm across your chest for 30 seconds here. You take a brand new rubber band, pull it back, hold it for 30 seconds, and then let it go. It's gonna return to its normal length, okay? So essentially it was just a complete waste of time. You're burning up time at practice. However, if you grab that rubber band, hold it to here for maybe an hour or put it around a book for a couple days, and then you take it off that book, it's not going to return to that resting length. Okay, it needs that longer period of time in that completely stretched out state in order for it to actually lengthen the rubber in the rubber band itself. And this is the exact same thing that's happening with our muscle fibers. Okay, the static stretching, the average person, the average baseball player normally does, the average static stretching is just a complete waste of time. You're holding it for 15, 30 seconds at the longest. In order to get a change at the musculoskeletal level, you have to hold that stretch for at least 30 minutes, okay, or longer. In the literature, they call this a plastic change, which is actually lengthening out the fibers themselves. And in baseball, we simply do not want that. You know, you want to be elastic. You don't want no saggy rubber bands. It simply comes down to rate of force development here, okay? If you have loose muscles, loose tendons, when it's time to send that signal of power up through the limbs, you're gonna have nothing. Same thing with a rubber band. You have a loose rubber band, you pull it back and let it go. Simply not gonna go as far as if you have a tight rubber band, you pull it back and let it fly. Same exact things happening here with your muscles, okay? When it's time to catch up to that 95-mile-an-hour heater, if you have that loose muscle fiber, those loose tendons, you're not going to be able to catch up to it. So the people that think that static stretching is going to increase the length of your muscle fiber, number one, the research simply doesn't back it up. And two, as an athlete, as an explosive baseball player, you do not want to increase the length of your muscle fibers. We can't lose that stiffness because it's so hard to get. And then there's a lot of people out there that say, hey, you're wrong, static stretching works, you know. I started static stretching and before I couldn't touch my toes, but now I can. And it's important to tell those people that the change isn't coming from changing the muscle fiber length, it's coming from your nervous system. Okay, so essentially when you static stretch, your nervous system is gonna start telling your body to shut off our protectors, our governors, so to speak, to allow us to get deeper into the stretch. Okay, so they call this a governor, basically, like in Fast and Furious when Vin Diesel takes out the governor in his car to make it go faster. In doing so, the engine of the car has to work a lot harder, so it could lead to major problems in the end. Same deal with stretching, okay? You hold a stretch, the CNS has to adapt and tell the GTOs to shut off. And then if you take a couple days off stretching, you're gonna be right back to square one. It's gonna be a complete waste of time. You're gonna gain no progress. Because static stretching tells our governors, our protectors, our GTOs, the stretch reflex, to protect us and to produce force. We don't want to turn those mechanics off. And of course, there's going to be some guys out there that say, wait, Summers, my coach says static stretching prevents injuries, so I think I'm going to keep doing it. You know, by all means, keep doing it, but I'd simply tell you, hey man, your coach is wrong. Let me show you something. Let's dive into the research a little bit. Here's just one, but it's a pretty known and pretty enormous meta-analysis of randomized controlled trials. So basically, they took a bunch of randomized controlled trials, looked at them all together to see how strength training, how proprioception training, and how stretching would reduce injuries, okay? So they looked at 25 total trials. This included 26,610 participants, and a total of 3,464 injuries. And long story short, what they found out was that good balance or proprioception training, if you don't know what that is, the book definition is the awareness of the position of body, of the movement. Okay, so a lot of athletes do this, train this through single leg balancing drills and stuff like that. So they found out that good balance with proprioception reduced injury by about 35%, and increasing strength reduced injury by 70%, and then static stretching did absolutely nothing. It made no significant change in reducing injuries. Okay, so in conclusion, they can conclude that in general, physical activity was shown to effectively reduce sports injuries. Stretching proved no beneficial effect, whereas multiple exposure programs, proprioception training, and strength training in that order showed a tendency towards increasing the effect. Don't get me wrong, range of motion is crucial. However, we only need as much as our sport demands, okay? And you're simply not going to get that through static stretching. You can get that through things like controlled articular rotations, PNF, FRC, functional range conditioning, to an extent, or eccentric lifting, eccentric qualities, you know, but I'm going to say that for a different video. So bottom line, should we static stretch? You know, the science tells us no, but we know how big of a role placebo effect can play. If you think it works, if you think it makes you feel better, maybe keep static stretching, and don't let me tell you any different.